Hey gang, Massad Ayoob here for the Wilson Combat Channel. I'd like to remind you to subscribe and press the notification bell. When you ring the notification bell, you'll be getting the earliest announcements of new videos when they become available. We're going to talk today about three of the major concealed carry preferences for carrying a serious fighting pistol on the belt. Now, we're going to start over here, and the reason we're starting with the belts in a holster video is when you carry, the belt and the holster are Gemini. They work together. If one works and the other doesn't, nothing works. We've all seen the guy with a good sturdy belt who's got some floppy holster that the brand should probably be Fruit of the Loom or something, and the gun comes all the way up to here before the holster starts to let go of it, and when he's carrying, the gun's carrying out inches from his body. And I've seen the guy with a custom $200 holster wearing it on a belt whose institutional memory is probably attention Kmart shoppers, and it looks like somebody skinned a chicken and managed to tan the hide. You want your belt, if you choose leather, to be reasonably thick, reasonably solid, and of course the tongue of the belt has got to mate with the slots of the holster, the loops of the holster that secure it in place. If you're going to go with a fabric belt, make sure it's a good double-lined, double-stitched belt with infinite adjustment. Of the types of holsters we have, and all these are Wilson Combat products, but this is an information video, not a sales video. We've got AIWB, Appendix Inside the Waistband Carry. It's become increasingly popular and increasingly controversial, and we'll discuss that. We have IWB, Inside the Waistband. Goes back probably into the 19th century when people figured out we can hide the gun better in the clothing than outside the clothing. And finally, the traditional OWB, Outside the Waistband. What we'll do is put these on one by one because each of them has pros, each of them has cons, and we'll analyze which attributes might work best for you. Before we begin, a few points on terminology. When we talk about where on the belt the holster is located, you'll hear X o'clock. Picture your torso in cross-section with the navel being 12 o'clock, your right hip 3 o'clock, your spine and the center of your spine being 6 o'clock, and your left hip 9 o'clock. You'll hear the terms tilt and cant. This outside the waistband Wilson holster with a SIG P320 is forward tilt, rear cant. Tilt refers to the orientation of the grip area. Cant refers to the orientation of the muzzle. The muzzle being pointed slightly to the rear, it's a rear cant. This gun would be back to here if the barrel were straight parallel to the leg. Here, because it conceals better, you have the forward tilt. The rationale of it is less bulge because you'll generally have garment draping down off the latissimus dorsi. It's carried here at 3:30. Right at 3 o'clock, on most of us, the pressure of the gun in the holster would be bearing directly against the hip bone. It's going to chafe the skin and it's going to be extremely uncomfortable. Coming just that little bit back there, put soft tissue in line with it, and it is distinctly more comfortable. Access to the gun, you generally are presuming an open front garment with a strong side hip holster. There are different ways to clear the coat. Just grabbing it, throwing it, and going for the gun gives you a very finite window. Gravity is at work, and that fabric can fall back down. And if your hand isn't fast enough or something disrupts your movement, you end up with a fistful of fabric instead of a fistful of firearm. What I like to do is take these three fingers, because we always disarticulate the trigger finger for safety, hit the abdomen here, and track back to the gun. As the fingertips come back, the little finger and the heel of the hand is clearing the garment for you, and it holds it out of the way as long as you need. The web of the hand now comes down, and you'll begin the draw with a rock and lock, and then a thrust in toward the thread. Now, one concern, and it's about to bring us to what we'll do next, the inside of the waistband holster. If you look at it in exact profile, there's a little bit of an abrupt L, where the muzzle of the holster, if you will, the bottom of the holster, departs from the body, and that can become a bulge point. Also, of course, because it is outside the belt, the concealing garment can come no higher than here. When you are trying on a holster, be wearing what's going to be your cover garment, and raise your arm on the gun hand side as high as you can, and look in the mirror and see whether or not the hem of the garment has lifted enough to reveal the holster. Remember, concealed means concealed. Okay, now we're inside the waistband. The Wilson Combat holster now contains an X-Tac Elite Compact. Now, if you look closely, we've got much tighter profile against the body. The belt itself is helping to hold the gun and holster in against you. The big advantage is the profile of your trousers is draping down, and we've eliminated most of the bulge that would appear under an upper body cover garment. You'll find it feels kind of snug, and the first time you put one on, they're going to feel uncomfortable. And I'll tell you what most of that is. You bought those pants for the waistband to fit you. Now there's a big ass gun and a holster in there with you, and naturally, no kidding Sherlock, it's going to be uncomfortable. For a constant wear of IWB, I recommend you're going to need a change in wardrobe, either let out the pants or buy new pants, about 2 inches larger in the waistband than what you would normally wear. You could also theoretically dye it and lose 2 inches, but this is America, and I don't ask the ridiculous or the impossible. If you want to give inside the waistband a try, go ahead with the pants you've got now. Unbutton the top button. Your belt buckle will cover that, and if the fashion police notice, they won't give you more than a warning, and they won't give you a fine, okay? You'll relax the belt by 1 to 2 notches, depending how you're built and how thick the pistol is. Now you're going to find out, okay, this is a whole lot more comfortable than it was. Tight, designed for me with, you know, if you've got a 40 pants and you put on the gun, you're looking really at needing a 42-inch waistband. Again, we have the forward tilt and the rearward cant to minimize protuberance here in printing. Still, we have good quick access. Because the gun is tighter to the body, your fingers are going to have to dig between your body and the gun. We find somebody who's got a really significant spare tire, soft tissue can get in between and kind of slow that down a little bit. But it doesn't mean you have to be a thin supermodel or something to wear inside the waistband holster. After about a week in a good holster, you get used to it. Let's look at some elements of good holster design. You'll see here on this one, it has the belt loops well fore and aft. The farther back they are, the more this leather inside the pants spreads. My fingers will trace the profile of the holster here. So instead of one thing this narrow being held tight against you and pressing into the hip area, you've spread that out, and it makes it a good deal more comfortable for all-day wear. You'll find with just an untucked t-shirt, maybe one size larger than you would normally wear. These are very comfortable. I've often carried a full-size 45. I'm size medium, so under a size large t-shirt or polo shirt untucked. Inside the waistband in a good IWB holster, a full-size government size 45 just disappears. So those are the pros and the cons of the inside the waistband in the conventional hip position. And now we'll go a little bit controversial with a hot topic here that's hot in a couple of ways: appendix inside the waistband carry. And finally, the increasingly popular and increasingly controversial appendix inside the waistband carry seen here. Now, a lot of people like it for a lot of reasons. First, it is extremely fast. In most situations, our hands are more toward the front of our body than they are toward the side. And when you need a surprise response, this hand goes to the cover garment to lift, because obviously the gun being in the front, you're going to have a closed front cover garment, and this hand to the gun. Now, a couple of points on the hand to the gun. A lot of the appendix carriers that I've worked with prefer to have their thumb here and not take the complete grasp of the gun until the draw is out. Among other things, if you have any spare tire at all, any soft tissue in here, that can get in the way of the thumb knifing between the body and the pistol to get the proper hold. In that situation, the thumb would take its grasp as you're coming up on target. Now, one downside of appendix inside the waistband carry is because it does lend itself to a closed front garment. You're going to need about twice the practice in clearing the gun. As much practice as you would have had with hip carry with an open front garment, you'll want to apply to two-handed, this hand lifting the cover garment, ripping it as high as you can, and this hand coming into the gun. But you've got to do about the same amount of practice, one-hand draw only. Now, for competition, there aren't that many one-handed draws, where this hand is otherwise occupied and can't assist by clearing the cover garment. Your problem is in the field, a huge number of reactive self-defense draws end up being one-handed events because this hand is fending off the attacker, it's pushing someone out of the way, it's operating communications or illumination or something like that. Of the different ways to draw one hand only from a closed front garment appendix, the best I've been able to find is what I call a Y hand. It's very useful in a number of martial arts. It's called that because the forearm in this position replicates the letter Y. Let the thumb come up and the web of the hand, the center of that Y, catches the hem of the garment. Bring that up as high as you can while this hand is otherwise occupied. Pivot down off the thumb. Now what you've done there, bring it up and locking the thumb in, you've kept that garment from starting to fall over it. Now the hand dives down essentially ahead of the falling garment, and you're much more likely to get a clean one-handed draw. Downsides of it, generally you want the belt higher than you need it necessarily for conventional hip carry. I'm one of the many who prefer jeans and BDUs that ride on the hips instead of up here at the waist. Generally, I only have a waist-high belt if I'm wearing a tailored suit or back when I was a cop in uniform. The greater height is necessary because when you bend forward or sit, the gun starts pressing into the groin area, and if the gun is large enough, can even be pressing into the genitalia. And if you're a little off-center, let's say 1230 or so here, as you sit down, it presses right into the juncture of the thigh and the torso. The big concern is the gun is pointed at the genitalia and in daily moving around at the femoral artery. Should there be an unattended discharge, the medical results can be absolutely catastrophic and in some cases have been fatal. So you're always going to be careful. You want an extra measure of care when you're working appendix. With a cocked and locked gun like this SFX9, I'd want my thumb here blocking the cocked hammer, so in case I had missed the safety and something caught the trigger guard, I can catch the hammer before it falls. If I was holstering my Wilson Beretta, the double action pistol, my thumb would be holding the hammer down to keep, if anything had caught the trigger, to keep it from bringing the hammer up and then falling and then discharging. Each of these techniques has their strengths and their weaknesses. One reason I generally carry behind the hip is, number one, a lifetime of habituation, and the habituation gets a vote. Going to something new requires a whole lot of repetitions to burn in and become reflexive. I've also competed in at least 2 shooting sports I can think of where appendix carry is forbidden, strong side is here, and if competition is still going to be part of my life, that's a concern that, in my case, favors the hip carry. USPSA and some other venues allow for appendix. Many police academies and private training academies forbid appendix for the safety reasons I've discussed, but many don't. And for a lot of people, if this is what you found to be the most comfortable for you, for instance, often you have to bend forward on the job, which tends to draw the fabric taut over the hip holstered pistol and cause a very distinctive bulge in printing. Now, if you are carrying on the hip, your cure for that is simply bend the knees and go down like a back patient instead of bending over. But a whole lot of folks simply can't do that in their daily job. Here, I can bend over as far as I want, and nothing's going to bulge here to show that I'm carrying. So each of these options has their very strong advocates. Some of them have very strong opponents. But the bottom line is you need to assess what works for you. What's your threat profile? Factor into that habituation. Factor into that also speed. That AIWB is very fast. A few years ago, I was shooting in the finals at the match at the Range Master Tactical Conference and had made my way midway through the man-on-man elimination came up against Spencer Keepers, probably the best known advocate for the Appendix holster and a manufacturer of excellent Appendix holsters, and who has a specific course for the Appendix holsters. We both had to start on the command to go. I'd been doing pretty good. I'd won every heat up until then. I went to here, cleared my coat. My pistol's coming up about to here when I heard Spencer Keeper's first shot go off. He was carrying a Beretta and a Spencer Keeper's, of course, AIWB holster. And when your opponent's this far in front of you and the shot goes off, there's time for you to think, this is not good. And it wasn't. He smoked me in the next run, and went on, of course, into the semifinals. So it is very fast. You'll find also Gabe White is, I believe, the only man who has shot a perfect score in the extremely difficult Rogers range at Bill Rogers Advanced Shooting School in Ellijay, Georgia. He's the only one to have done it from concealment, and he did it from appendix inside the waistband. So balance your needs, balance your habituation, balance the rules of the games you'll be playing in the academies that you'll be training at. Find what works best for you, and feel free to let us know. There is a comment section here. Chime in, let us know what your experiences have been. We'll look forward to hearing from you here at the Wilson Combat Channel.